Before we begin our reading of the Gospel of John, I thought I would share just a little bit about my own personal connection with this Gospel. I have long loved the book of John. I seem to have a deep affinity for the way that this gospel in particular is presented. As many of you may know, the other three gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are known as the synoptic gospels because there are similarities in the three and in the kinds of stories that appear and generally speaking in the ways that those are presented, although each, of course, has their own unique perspective. Matthew, Mark, and Luke spoke to different audiences. The book of John is somewhat distinct, so I'm going to speak to this not as a scholar at all. I want to make that very clear that my sharing is only from my heart and it has no basis in academics. I did go to seminary, but I have not studied this extensively. And I really prefer to come from a place of my heart's knowing, and that's what I will be doing in this course, although I want to encourage and invite you, if you are interested in the study and looking at the tradition and John's perspective and the history and the context in which this narrative was recorded, I really want to invite you to explore that further for yourself. That being said, my connection with the Gospel of John has been one of just every time I've heard anything from the Gospel of John, from the time I was a small child, I have just felt such love and such a knowing that this is truth and that there is something here for me. And I want to invite you to have your own experience with this narrative as all of the videos in this series, and I want you to come at this from your own heart's knowing, and so really open up to receive. For me, there is such a resonance with both the deep love and compassion that is present, both in the character, if you will, the person of Jesus and the stories that are told about Jesus of Nazareth. And there is also a very human dynamic that is captured in the book of John for me and my reading of it. And so those are the things that really resonate for me, and there are particular passages which I will refer to in the course that in particular light me up and just really more than light me up. They light me up and they set me free. I mean, there's something in a deep soul connection for me in some of the passages recorded in the book of John. And then in addition, for myself, there has always been a sort of story that has lived within me, if you will, of the character of John, the writer, the author, and the relationships that John, while he was on Patmos, perhaps, where he wrote the book of Revelation, and earlier in his life, the relationships that were maintained through all those years after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And the disciples were scattered, and this was a time of uncertainty and change in their lives. And this was a reflection, a looking back on the stories that one had lived. And just, that fact alone is deeply moving to me. And I can feel myself in this gospel, in these stories, more than perhaps some of the other tellings of the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I am happy to share it with you. It's an honor and a privilege, and I thank you for being with me on the way.